Welcome in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell along with you here in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Our guy Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust hanging out with us for, what's like 7th or 8th time now. I said it a moment ago. I think you're our most frequent flyer.
Well, I guess we'll have to start keeping a tally sheet so we know exactly where we're at. But no, glad to be back in here. Obviously, disappointing and wish we were celebrating some bigger news today.
Sure.
But that's okay. It's a good Thursday, and obviously a lot to still fight for the Gamecocks on the men's and women's side in basketball, and baseball's off to a decent start. Obviously disappointing with the weekend, but I think there's a lot going on in Gamecock world that we can talk about.
So we'll kind of start off with that. And again, we got plenty of things to get to with NIL and the state bills and all that kind of stuff, which we'll get to over the course of the hour. And we were talking about this a lot yesterday. And again, I've only been covering this program for roughly 2 years. But has there ever been a bigger game in Colonial Life Arena than what took place last night?
I actually was texting Chris about this the other day. I don't think so. I've been to a lot of games in Colonial Life Arena. It's opened in 2002. I think yesterday was absolutely the biggest game that we've had. I guess the biggest, whatever you want to define it as, most meaningful game moving forward. I mean, there have been very few times in my lifetime where we're sitting here on March 5th and we didn't have to win a game to hope that you can go to the NCAA tournament. So it's a good feeling to be in. It's kind of interesting. I was saying to everyone yesterday, a couple friends texted me and whatnot and asking how I felt about the game, and I just said it's a good place to be in because obviously if we win, it's great, it's unbelievable. If you lose, it's arguably one of the top. No, it's arguably maybe the top best or the best team in the country. Definitely a top 4 team in the country, top 5 team in the country. And it's like people aren't expecting you to win. It doesn't hurt your net. It doesn't hurt your seeding. It doesn't hurt your rankings. I mean, there's no downfall if you lose. But the downfall, I say all that to say, I sat there for about 2 hours last night before I went to bed after the game, and I was like, "Dang, this stings," And so I didn't expect to have that feeling because of there was really no negative, but it stings. But listen, you can pick your head up and go to Starkville, Mississippi this weekend and win a game, and hope the Volunteers do you a favor and win on Saturday. And there's still a lot to play for.
Did you go to the game, Mark?
I did go to the game.
What do you think of the atmosphere?
Incredible atmosphere. I just felt like if we could have tied it up, if we could have gotten to a tie point in the game, then the place would have just busted wide open. And so it was disappointing that we couldn't ever quite get there. I mean, we cut it to 3 with a minute and 15 seconds to go. And I felt like if we could have gotten a stop, like we were due for a big basket, that the place just would have erupted.
When it got cut to 3, I was like, this might happen. Like, you could just feel the energy in the building, and it was like Carolina every time. In some ways, it did feel a little bit like the Florida game, except South Carolina was able to make their push a good bit earlier in the second half, so there wasn't quite as much pressure at that point on every single shot. But it felt like every time South Carolina would push it, Tennessee would go on a run. And so at the end, when they got it down to 3, I was like, man, if they could, like you said, I was sitting there thinking, if they could get one stop here and have the basketball.
And realistically, the play that happened, I mean, we forced a shot at Meechie ended up fouling the guy, and he had to, but we ended up forcing the shot at like 5 seconds left to go on the shot clock. I mean, we made them work the entire shot clock for that last shot. And Adu dropped, and Colin stayed out and didn't follow him back, which is, they were just trying to pin the guy to force a bad pass. And left him open, and so Meechie had a foul. But I do think that it was I agree with that. If you could have had that same feeling, going into the under 4-minute timeout versus going into the end of the game, then you have to feel like you could have kept the momentum going.
Oh, I'm sitting here tapping my screen. I feel like the net is broke, and it's just stuck South Carolina at 47.
And we're sitting there. I looked at it this morning. I even thought actually after the game last night, I was like, we might move up, which was kind of crazy, but at least a spot or two because of, you played a team that's the 5th ranked team in the net, and you kind of feel like you went toe for toe with them. I really felt like, to be honest, and I said this last night, but I kind of felt like it was the same game as we had in Knoxville. The roles were just reversed a little bit, right? I kind of felt like Tennessee controlled most of the game. It's just like we did in Knoxville. There were a couple points where you even in the second half you had a little bit of a spread. I think we spread it out to 9 points in Knoxville. They spread it out to 14 in the second half last night, and then they kind of made a run, and then they had to hit their free throws at the end of the game to seal the game up. And it was a very similar situation, which I think are, really and truly, I think they might be the two best teams in the conference.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that. Garnet's stat line was almost very similar to what he had up in Knoxville as well. He was 9 of 23 from the field, which it felt like he didn't miss any of the shots that he took last night, but ended up scoring 26 points. But the guys around him, Adu, Ziegler, ended up having a little bit more of an impact on the game than opposed to what they had in Knoxville. And again, it's a 7-point game at the end of the day, very close loss. And again, to a team that's likely going to be a number 1 seed or one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament coming up here in a couple weeks. Nothing to hang your head about, certainly, but yes, being some 12 hours removed from the game, it still stings a little bit.
Yeah, I just hope the guys can rally, and obviously a lot to play for in Starkville. Short week. Mississippi State also, they had the late game last night, so they even have a shorter rest period in time. But they go home to the hump. Hard place to win. But I will say, defense travels, and I think that we'll. The only concern that I have about that game specifically is that. Mississippi State is pretty much playing for all the marbles. I mean, they have to win to get in. I kind of want them to win last night, so it's like, all right, well, like that pressure's off of them a little bit. But we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. And again, that game coming up on Saturday, wrap up the regular season SEC tournament next week. And like you mentioned a moment ago, at least you're already locked into the NCAA tournament, so you're not having to worry about winning anything between now and then to further that case there. So exciting time for basketball, not only on the men's side of thing, but obviously the women as they get set to start the SEC women's tournament coming up tomorrow. From y'all's perspective with the Garnet Trust, what's been the buzz around basketball just over these past couple of months?
A lot of buzz. We've obviously, for the Garnet Trust members that are out there listening, we have launched the 1K Club, which is a men's basketball specific fundraising organization group within the Garnet Trust that Lamont Paris, Coach Paris, actually came up with the idea, and we're trying to get folks to donate $1,000 one time a year to specifically go to men's basketball. Obviously, the idea was if we can get 500 people to do that, then that's $500,000 that's specifically dedicated to men's basketball. And so we've launched that. We actually sent out an email about this. We've sent a couple tweets and email. We've had some good success with it early on, and so excited to do that. Obviously, on the women's basketball side, I mean, there's incredible amount of excitement. I mean, we had 6 girls that were all SEC for the season. Coach Staley was conference coach of the year, and has just done a tremendous job as far as just preparing these girls. A lot of girls that we didn't know what they were capable of totally, and so it's very exciting to see this run. I get a little nervous that we're going in undefeated, but I'm not going to complain about it either at the same time. So that's the way it goes.
Let's go back to the 1K Club real quick. How much do you think, like I feel like it's always a chicken or an egg scenario where you need great NIL support in order to be successful. But then sometimes there's a segment of your fans that are going to be like, man, I want to see some success to get excited, and then I'm going to give some money. How much does let's be honest, kind of a surprise successful season to this extent, how much has that helped in terms of contributions to?
I think it's helped a lot specifically in the aspect of for something like the 1K Club, right? For what is a relatively comparatively to some of these other donation wise, I mean, a lower dollar. I mean, it's $1,000 is a lot of money, but we've got some folks who specifically with this team invested early on kind of in the trust and faith of Coach Paris, right? And so now it's time that we're really going to try to parlay our success into getting just a general crowdsourcing of funding for men's basketball. So, yeah, I think the chicken and the egg thing, right? We had to get the egg, hatched and growing. But now that the chicken is coming around and probably going to start producing, I mean, and the reality is, listen, with us being so successful, there are higher quality players that want to come to South Carolina because of our success, and they want to play for Lamont Paris. And that makes a big impact on your NIL bottom line, is because you have to make sure that you have those resources in place to fulfill some of these NIL needs that some people might have in the portal. How
hard was it to sell this team to people a year ago?
It was hard for me to sell it. Coach Paris, and I'll be honest, I bought in probably earlier than most. I'm not sitting here claiming that I was like, we're going to be an NCAA tournament team, whatever. But I had spent a lot of time with Coach Paris, spent a lot of time with Kerry Rich, had gone to some practices, and we went up. Me and a friend of mine went up to the game in Charlotte against Virginia Tech early on, and I said, you know what, this is real. I mean, not to say that Virginia Tech was the end-all, be-all, but I mean, they are a legitimate team. Mike Young is a NCAA tournament coach a couple times over, and very legitimate team. And I just felt like, I was like, we've got something here. But, I mean, going into the summer last year and kind of the transfer portal window last year, it was very difficult for a while to sit here and say, okay, well, we got to raise the X number of dollars for this men's basketball team. We had some folks step up that were really believers in what Coach Paris is doing, and we're very gracious for those people. And then obviously now trying to spread it out a little bit and try to get some more fans involved.
Yeah, not to get too far ahead of ourselves. There's a lot more to play for here. One final regular season game, SEC tournament, and then we'll see where this team gets seeded and who they're going to face and try to make a run at this thing. I think this team kind of is built for tournament success as well. But if we do look ahead a little bit, obviously a lot of this team was built from the portal. So when you build from the portal, it means you're going to lose guys, and then you kind of have to, like this offseason is going to be big to keep adding talent. How important is it for them to have that support from the NIL standpoint? I know a lot of the portal guys are going to be looking like, hey, what is the NIL picture at South Carolina look like when I'm making my decision? Do you think that this program could be in an even better spot now compared to last year when they're out there recruiting portal prospects?
Absolutely. We are going to be in a way better spot for men's basketball NIL than we were last year. And I am excited about where we're going. We've talked about those things. We've already kind of started planning for next year's roster now, where that the transfer portal hasn't even opened up yet, right? So we don't. But the good thing is you're only really losing. I mean, Stephen Clark was definitely a contributor early on. He's played some minutes here in the past couple of games, but not a heavy contributor. But B.J. Mack and Talon Cooper, you lose, and so you got to go find a big man and a point guard. And then retention is obviously a huge thing. Michi can come back. Miles Studi can come back. Zach Davis can come back. Jacoby Wright can come back. Michi Johnson can come back. And so, that's that could be, Colin Murray Boyles is obviously the big one that can come back, who was a freshman. And so you've got some really good pieces in place. And so I think that it's even makes it, outside of the NIL perspective, it makes it even more attractive for some of these guys. Hey, I want to come play with Michi and Colin Murray Boyles, right? Or I want to come play with Zach Davis. I want to run the 1-3-1 with Zach Davis, right? I mean, that is an appealing thing for some folks out of the transfer portal. But we've got to go get a point guard, and we've got to go get a big man. And then we got to the biggest point is going to be, a lot of big points are going to be retention too.
I think it's fascinating how the conversation has changed, where you have a freshman in CMB 5-10 years ago. Nobody would even be thinking about, hey, that guy could leave. Like, it's like, oh, we have that guy for at least 2 or 3 years because he's only a freshman. Now you have a freshman who's a star. Everybody's minds, I mean, everybody I talk to about the team, hey, we got to keep CMB. You got to keep CMB here. So it's completely changed how we even look at the young players on a roster, I feel like, when it comes to retention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the name of the game is, I mean, retention is maybe just as important as going into the transfer portal and getting some guys. And we've got some really good freshmen coming in as well. I don't think that Coach Paris wants to build an entire team on the transfer portal, because then it just becomes year in and year out and one and done. I think he believes in a little bit of a system. So if you can keep Michi, Miles, Zach, Jacoby, Colin, that's a really good, Josh Gray, that's a really good 6 guys right there that can be a real impact, that all of a sudden you just add 1 or 2 guys out of the portal and you kind of feel like you're already maybe top half of the conference.
Continue our conversation with Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust as the Garnet Trust Hour rolls along on your Thursday morning here on The Game.
All right, guys, continuing to welcome our newest sponsor here on the show. It's our friends over at Classic Roofing. My buddies Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer, they're both longtime residents of the Palmetto State. Their families live here, and they want to help you make sure that your roof at your house is in tip-top shape. They're offering residential and commercial roofing services throughout Columbia, South Carolina, and the surrounding areas. Give them a call today, 803-590-7870, or head on over to classicroofingsc.com where you can get more information about their background, their services, or to help set up a free estimate. With their wealth of experience spanning more than 20 years, their team of experts is well equipped to handle all of your roofing requirements. That could be a residential project, a commercial undertaking, or really anything in between. They've got you covered. Again, that's 803-590-7870. Or head on over to classicroofingsc.com where you can get more information about them and you can set up that free estimate that we talked about. Again, 803-590-7870. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
Welcome back in. It's the Garnet Trust Hour. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust hanging out with you here in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Real quick before we get back into our conversation, I want to remind you about the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway going on all baseball season long. Head on over to 1075thegame.com each and every week and register for your chance to win. Every game, $25 gets added to the pot, and when a Gamecock hitter hits a grand slam this season, you could win all the cash that is in the pot at that point in time. Again, go to 1075thegame.com and register each and every week for your chance to win. We'll move on to some of the legislation stuff in just a second, but I want to ask one more basketball question. We didn't have time for it in that last segment. Talking about CMB, a guy that was so highly touted coming in, had a great preseason, and ends up getting mono and isn't able to play for the first roughly half of the season, but has exploded in conference play over these past couple of months. From your perspective, with his NIL value, how have you seen that increase just over the course of him playing this season?
It's a good problem to have, right? You know, you don't necessarily love that his NIL value is probably increasing, and his want from other schools is probably increasing, but you love to have it on your team, right? And I mean, he was kind of a hidden talent, not super highly recruited out of high school at first. Kind of got in on him early. He went to Utah, played prep school, refined his basketball skills, came back, and obviously was a great player. You know, he's kind of a tweener in size, right? You know, he's a good 4, but I think that, you know, it's an exciting problem to have, and I mean, we're gonna be determined to make sure that we present the best NIL opportunities for Colin Murray-Boyles to remain a Gamecock.
Yeah, not to get too deep into it, but I got to think that am I off? I got to think that if having a local guy as you know, kind of potentially to be the star of this program moving forward, I think if you really want to look big picture, a local guy, to me, maybe that creates some opportunity. Like if I'm a local business and I look at CMB, not just the talent, look at how he plays, look at how he carries himself, look at the passion. I think he's harder on himself than anybody else. Like just watching his reaction to a ball maybe falling off the rim versus going in. Like if I'm a local business, I am all in on being like, this is somebody I could see being a face of my business from an advertising standpoint. So I would think with CMB, this is a guy that there are lots of opportunities here. Not just, oh, he's a great player, you got to keep him at South Carolina, but if I'm a local business owner, I'm very interested in doing business with this kid.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think it could really be kind of like a little bit of what we're seeing on some businesses with Lenore Sellers, right? Another local guy, kind of grown up in the state. You know, people have talked about him for a couple of years, so he's already kind of almost built a brand before he got there. Colin is probably a little bit less of that because he had left for a little time, but people that keep up with high school basketball in South Carolina have known about Colin Murray-Boyles for a couple of years at this point, right? I think I will tell you this, and this is a problem that I have or that we have to face is with the transfer portal, businesses seem to be a little less inclined to tie their brand to a player because all of a sudden it's like, all right, you know, we built this product around Colin Murray-Boyles or X player, whoever it may be, and I don't expect Colin to leave. I fully 100% expect Colin to be a Gamecock next year, so that's a different point. But, you know, imagine if you had built your brand around Juice Wells, right? And you know, he was here for 2 years and then leaves, and then you kind of feel like you got betrayed a little bit by him. And there are members that complain about that to us as well. But I think that's probably a little bit of a hesitancy on a business side is we don't want to brand a product or brand our business as being associated with just one player because what happens if that player does transfer? So that's something, a little bit of a counter argument. Now I'm trying to sell businesses on what you just said.
I was about to say, you need to
right?
go with my argument.
I know I need to be on your argument, but that is something that we have to face a little bit.
Switching gears here, we've talked about this the multiple amount of times that you've been in here on this show, the potential of an NIL bill here in the state of South Carolina. Since you've been on, a lot of things been happening across the street at the State House a couple weeks ago. Coach Beamer was over there, Dabo Sweeney, representatives from all the schools around the state were there, and it seems like things are progressing very well through the State House and the legislation as far as getting an NIL bill approved in the state of South Carolina.
Yeah, we're really excited about the opportunities that the legislature are going to present us. It is fully through the House, through Senate committee, and then on the Senate calendar for it to go on the floor, hopefully in the next week or two. Excuse me. It will get voted on, and and then we'll go from there. So it have to get it. There are some amendments on it, agreeable amendments on all sides. So it'll get passed in the Senate, or hopefully, cross our fingers, get passed in the Senate, and then we'll go back to the House to concur with the amendments, which. No, I don't think there should be any hang up there, and then to go to the governor to get signed. And this bill is unique in the fact that it goes into effect as upon signature of the governor. So some bills, there's a time date. Okay, well, it'll go into effect on this date or go into effect on that date. But this bill specifically goes into effect upon signature of the governor. And so we will be in a new NIL world if this becomes law. It's good for Garnet Trust. It's good for the University of South Carolina. And so we're excited about the opportunities that it could present itself.
Is this one of the few things in history where South Carolina and Clemson are they in lockstep?
I guess so. I will say I do think that, and I don't know this exactly, but I do think that the bill actually allows for NIL to operate still a little differently at schools. So I don't think that Clemson is going to do it the exact same way that we are going to do it at South Carolina. But we have that freedom and flexibility within the legislation. So it's exciting. Listen, the reality is that if both schools had not been agreeable on this bill, then it wouldn't have gone anywhere. And so we knew that from the get-go, and the university knew that, and the athletic department, and Coach Tanner and Hillary Cox specifically on our side have been really pushing things down the road.
I think it's easy for fans to get fatigue about just all the changes that have come to college football. You see, NCAA and NIL discussions at the national level. They're trying to follow what's going on at the state level as well. Can you give fans listening a little bit of just a summary of exactly what this means? Because I think it's very easy to get confused about all the different changes, all the different things that have been happening. So this one, it appears like it is on the fast track to be happening. So what will that mean specifically for USC and Garnet Trust?
Yeah, so for Gamecock fans that are listening, the biggest couple of things that will open up is that Gamecock Club members will be able to receive priority points for their donations to Garnet Trust. So
that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So you will be able to get credit if this goes into effect. You will be able to get credit from the Gamecock Club for donations that you make to Garnet Trust. That is probably the number one priority. And I say get credit. There are a couple different ways that happens, right? And we've got to kind of work through our I guess working together with the Gamecock Club to figure out exactly what that all looks like for donors and for boosters and for support, fan support. But that's a big deal. The second thing is that it allows us to, it allows the university even or the Gamecock Club to actually enter into NIL agreements with student athletes. So if they wanted to pay them directly from the Gamecock Club, it would allow that. I don't foresee that happening. We are going to continue to work through Garnet Trust, and there will be a little bit more of even a cohesiveness between Gamecock Club and Garnet Trust financially and through NIL deals. And then the biggest thing is it allows for protection from the NCAA if they were to say, oh, well, this violates our rule. Well, it violates maybe an archaic rule that you had in place, but it allows for the state government, which supersedes NCAA rules, to have that protection. So this is, absolutely, for anybody that's listening out there, this is one of the more aggressive NIL bills, in the country. It will allow us to have some opportunities that we didn't think were really possible even a year or two ago. But similar to what has happened in Missouri, Texas and Arkansas also have similar bills. So we'll be maybe the fifth state to pass something like this. There are a couple other states right now that already have something like this in place. And then on top of that, the TRO that came down from a judge a couple weeks ago against Virginia and Tennessee, that allows for us as a collective to meet directly with a student athlete before they enroll on campus.
We'll continue on this conversation with Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust as the Garnet Trust Hour rolls along here on The Game.
All right, guys, basketball tournament is coming up. Sounds like a great excuse to upgrade your man cave or just upgrade the living room TV. How about giving our friends at Integrated Media a call, 803-948-8327. Or if you want more information on what they can do at your home, head on over to integratedmediainc.com. They've been to Chris Clark's home. They've been to my home. Let them come to yours as well. They offer a variety of services from smart home upgrades to home theater to basically anything audio and video in your house, TV installations. Maybe you want to hang your TV, but you're just not quite comfortable putting your 65-inch investment on the wall yourself. They can handle that for you. Or maybe you want to upgrade your entire security system at your home. They can do that too. For me, it was about upgrading my internet, running Ethernet throughout the home, and making sure that my office was set up perfectly. Call them right now. Go to integratedmediainc.com for any and all of your smart home needs.
Welcome back in, Garnet Trust Hour. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust hanging out with us on this Thursday morning. Quick reminder, you can check out our social media coverage of the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament with our guy Elijah Campbell live from Greenville, all sponsored by Atkins Law. Go on Twitter at 1075 The Game to check all of that out. I want to continue on our conversation about things going on across the street at the State House. And you mentioned that South Carolina's NIL bill is one of the more aggressive ones that is out there as of right now. And for the longest time, we talked about South Carolina being behind the eight ball by not having one compared to some of these other states. But the fact that they've been able to pull some things from what these other states have done and loop it in their own NIL bill, does that benefit them more on the back end? And you certainly don't want to be late to the party, but you can add more things to your bill that other states maybe haven't. Yeah,
I mean, it allows you to learn from some. I mean, there obviously there are some mistakes at some of these other places. I mean, I'll give you a great example. The way that our 501c3 is set up is much better than the way that Texas A&M's 501c3 was set up. So they had to close down the 501c3 at Texas's NIL because of the IRS was going to come in because of the way that they were transferring money and those kind of things. And so we've set ours up in a it's called a long form, but it makes ourselves a lot more protected in that aspect and did it the correct way on the front end, which hats off to Jeremy and some of the folks who were part of those conversations very early on. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that you'll learn from some of these other schools and other states. And so we've been in touch with some of our counterparts in Missouri to kind of figure out how they've made it work for them. And so we're trying to learn from some of these other places and make sure that whenever the law does go into effect, we can execute best practices.
Mark, do you think revenue share is the next big change, or are we still?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coming at some point. I don't know what I tell you this. If I could, I'll go on a rant for a second. But if I could draw up the perfect scenario, I think what the answer probably is, to make it fair, because I don't love this whole idea of give everybody the same amount of money, right? I mean, because and I guess that would be the fair way to do it. But listen, baseball doesn't do that. Basketball doesn't do that. And so, I mean, there are some flexibilities there. Obviously, football, NFL does. So what I think I would want to do is, okay, let's take the SEC. If they transferred $58 million to the schools this year, that number is going to jump to close to 75, I think, whenever Texas and Oklahoma join the conference. Let's just say each school gets 10% of their SEC check, their TV revenue, that goes to their preferred collective or organization or whatever that pays out NIL, right? So that gives everybody a baseline of $7.5 million, that everybody in the conference has that baseline. But then I think you would set a limit on, let's call it, I've said 12 and a half, I've said 15, whatever it may be. So then all of a sudden, then you can only spend up to 12 and a half or 15. So, Vanderbilt or Mississippi State or any of these other schools, right? Maybe that don't have the resources to do that. They still get 7.5. So they still got enough to be competitive. And if you work your magic a little bit and you find some pieces in the portal that are cheaper than others that end up being good players, then that's good. You still have something in place. But if you have the ability to raise more money or get more NIL deals for players that equate to more, then that gives you a little bit of advantage. So it gives everybody a level floor, but it doesn't, and it does give a ceiling, but it doesn't require you to go to the ceiling.
So the ceiling is basically a salary cap, essentially.
To a certain degree, but is everybody going to get to the salary cap? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And some people say, well, how would you regulate that? The idea, I think, would be, especially if it's conference instituted, is that you have to turn in your receipts to the conference. You can only play in conference-affiliated events if you follow that law. Now, the flip side of all this is then do we just open this back up to go to where we were probably before NIL and, do deals happen under the table, that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, that's part of the change in that.
You mentioned something interesting in explaining that, where should we get to a revenue sharing type of model, would it be the university athletic department, however you want to phrase it, giving to the NIL and then, y'all as a collective, and then the money gets doled out that way? Or is it payments directly from the university to the athletes and then you guys are a supplement in addition to that?
Yeah, and I don't know what the answer is going to be. The hard part is if you start revenue sharing directly from the university, then athletes become employees. And that is a place where absolutely no one else seems to want to go. And I don't know, and so if they're employees of the collective or a separate organization, a private organization, you probably aren't as subject to as many, rules and regulations from a court standard that you might be if it comes from a public university, right? And so I do think, I know that Coach Saban is actually going to be up in D.C. in a week or two to talk about this kind of stuff. And he's a big advocate that he does not want them to be employees. That is detrimental for the sport as a whole, right? People will say, oh, well, they're working, they're doing this. It was like, say goodbye to beach volleyball, say goodbye to equestrian, say goodbye to softball probably, say goodbye. We could list out the sports, right? Swimming and diving, men's and women's tennis, track and field, cross country, gymnastics at schools. Say goodbye to those, because there is no way that any school in the conference, any school in America really, can support those sports and still have the money to pay employees that are basketball and football players. And so that's where I think that you at all costs, we've got to avoid going down the path of making them employees.
You got anything else to add on the law side of things, rule side?
No.
I want to change the subject, so I want to make sure
I think
covered it.
I think we're good. If I think it's something, we'll go back to it.
Yeah.
But
I want to talk a little football. Spring practice starting, I guess, next week, or pro day next week, and then the transfer portal class. I don't know if we've had you in. Maybe we have, but what have you thought of just what you've heard so far? And then I got to meet some of the guys, man. You can just tell, like, these are mature adults as opposed to 18-year-old freshmen. What have you just thought of this group, man?
That is the first thing that comes to my mind is we did, and I think I maybe have been on since then. But
I think you have actually.
But we did a dinner with all the freshmen.
I think you came on the day after that.
Yeah, maybe so. But we did a dinner with all the freshmen, and then we did a dinner with the transfer guys just to kind of get to know them, get a better feel for everything. And just the maturity level from the social aspect of it, the maturity level. I'm really excited. I think that we have significantly upgraded our talent on the football roster. I think we've got guys that can compete at the SEC level. And listen, we still got a gauntlet of a schedule, but we Coach Beamer, Taylor Edwards, the entire staff did a really good job of finding some guys out of the portal who I think, specific on the lines of scrimmage. We and I said this before, we retained every starting offensive lineman that could have come back, and then we retained every starting defense lineman that could have come back, and then we added depth on both those sides as well. And this is a line of scrimmage league, and we know that, and I do think that you can go in the portal and find some wide receivers or a running back or things like that skill type players. It is hard to find a fully developed SEC ready defensive lineman or offensive lineman to come into your scheme. That's just so much harder of a position to plug and play. And so we did add some depth there, but we really wanted to focus on retaining some of the guys there and make sure nobody left.
We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Garnet Trust Hour with Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Mark Benoit from the Garnet Trust hanging out with us for a few more minutes here. Quick reminder, coming up tomorrow, another weekend baseball series gets rolling with the Gamecocks playing host to Longwood. Pre-game coverage starts at 6:45 tomorrow evening for a 7 o'clock first pitch as the Gamecocks wrap up their non-conference slate of baseball series before taking on Ole Miss coming up next weekend. I want to jump back into a conversation about football. You mentioned those introductory dinners with the freshmen and the transfer portal guys a couple months back, the last time we had you on the show. When you're sitting down with these guys to discuss NIL deals and all that kind of stuff, what is the difference between talking to a true freshman and talking to somebody like Rocket Sanders that's been around the game for a couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, there's just, I mean, they're, and you know, the needs change. I mean, it's crazy, right? Because like a Rocket is a guy who came in and the NIL wasn't really available probably his freshman year, right? So then it's like, then it changes, and you know, now, and I actually even saw that Coach Saban made a comment about this, I think, in an article recently. You know, it's like the game has just changed so much that you got freshmen that come in and say, how much I'm going to play because I'm thinking about transferring, and what can you do for me in an NIL? And, I mean, don't get me wrong, the transfer guys, I mean, the older guys, I mean, NIL is definitely part of them coming here, but it is not as important, I don't feel like, as it could be for some of these freshman players because they just have to deal with it, you know, all the time.
Mark, what's going on with Garnet Trust, man? Anything big coming?
We got some exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. I think that we're going to have an announcement later today, actually, that will be really big for NIL as a whole at the University of South Carolina, and so we're excited for that. And we're it's a grind every day. We're trying to raise more money, and so we can attract and retain quality talent. But it's an exciting time. It really is. When we've got, you know, we didn't even dive into baseball, but I mean, baseball is going to be starting conference play here soon. Obviously disappointed with the 2 games this past weekend, but honestly, I don't know if you've had 2 better games of baseball in the whole country as you did in the Clemson Carolina series this past weekend. Disappointed we were not on the winning side of those, but baseball's off to a good start. I think that we've got softball is doing good. The women's and men's tennis are doing good. Women's golf is playing well. That they're struggling a little bit this week down at the Darius Rucker Intercollegiate, but they got a really good top ranked team. A lot of really good things going on. Garnet Trust is growing phenomenal. We just had our first quarter review so far in this year. Our membership is up 300% from the spot it was in January of 2023, which is outstanding. We've got the 1K club that we've continued to launch. We've got some really exciting things down the pipeline that are going to be coming in the summer and the fall. So we're excited. Obviously, trying to raise more money than we did last year, but that's the name of the game, and we feel like we're competitive. We've got Jeremy's actually going up to DC next week for some congressional meetings, so we're all over the place.
I know y'all had some watch parties with Steel Hands for baseball.
Yep.
Do you think more and more just kind of events and watch parties, and especially with the NCAA tournament coming up, men and women's,
right?
Maybe something like that.
We're definitely we're working on another watch party. We had kind of, whenever we started planning something else, we kind of thought that was going to be a little bit more geared for baseball season as we kind of shifted that way. However, we're both going to be playing in late March for men's and women's basketball. So excited to kind of incorporate that into some of the stuff there. And so more watch parties. The biggest thing is just brand awareness, bringing people to understand what Garnet Trust is doing and the impact that we're making for our coaches and our players.
Is it safe to say this is y'all's busiest time of year?
I think you ask me that question every time. I think every time is the busiest.
It's all busy, right? I mean,
listen, I mean, it is, you know, obviously football is a whole different mindset whenever it comes there. Right now it's busy because you got multiple sports that you're trying to kind of cover, and football is always still, you know, a priority as well. But we're wide open all the time, and we've got some great interns. They're on spring break this week, so it's just been me and Jeremy this week. But we've had some great success, and want to continue to build on what we've done. We are well on pace to do way better than we did last year, which is exciting, and we'll continue to grow on that.
Yeah. So anything else we have not covered today, Mark? Anything
I'm trying to think.
You want to hit on, man?
If there is, you know, I mean, the biggest thing is I just want people to join Garnet Trust. I know I hit on that every time, and you know, we have. This is a a unique opportunity. We've got about 2,500 members now. We've got to continue to push for more people to join, and you can join for as little as $10 a month. We're really excited about just some different opportunities we're going to have in the coming weeks for our membership. I'll talk about the 1K Club as I mentioned earlier. That's a great opportunity. If you're a men's basketball fan, you really love what you're seeing, you want to continue to see that. The 1K Club is a great way to support the men's basketball program. But we've got to get more people involved to continue to keep up with the Joneses, right? I mean, we're in the most competitive conference from a competitive standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, and from an NIL standpoint. And we got to make sure that we keep our ground.
If somebody wants to sign up, where do they need to go?
They need to go to garnettrust.com, click join now. Like I said, you can join for as little as $10 a month. If you want to do more, then great. If you're interested in making a larger contribution, you can do that, a tax deductible contribution to our 501c3 Garnet Trust Foundation. You can email me, mark@garnettrust.com. Love to sit down and have lunch with you, talk with you a little bit more about what we're doing behind the scenes, and so you can stay in the loop about how you can help Gamecock Athletics.
Last one for you here before we let you go. If we don't get to talk to you over the course of the next month, how far does this team go in the NCAA tournament?
I think we are absolutely a second weekend team.
Okay.
I think that obviously it depends on matchups, and there are a lot of things that go in that. I think if we can be a 6 seed or even a 5 seed, I definitely think that if you can match up well with a 4 or 3, then you've got a lot of opportunity to go into the next weekend. Fantastic.
Well, hopefully that is the at least bare minimum of what they're able to accomplish in the tournament. Come up here in a couple weeks. Appreciate it as always, Mark, and we'll have you in here again before too long, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That'll do it for today's edition of the Garnet Trust Hour. He's Mark Benoit, Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, along with you. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.